Hello, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining in for the fall edition of CFIC's Conference for Inquiry 2021. I'm John Varghese, and as chair of the Communications Committee for the Center for Inquiry Canada, I'm privileged to take on this role of welcoming you all to this event.
Our first speaker is Kato Mukasa, who will be speaking about the God business and the death of reason in Africa. Kato Mukasa is a lawyer who is heavily involved in Uganda's humanist and secular groups. He co-founded the Humanist Association for Leadership, Equity, and Accountability in 2007 to promote critical thinking and human rights. Kato is chair of the Uganda Humanist Association. He's a former member of the board of directors of the International Humanist and Ethical Union and board of directors of Atheist Alliance International. Today's talk will be a journey into the 5-year process of making Kato's latest book, The God Business and the Death of Reason in Africa, Unlocking the Slave Mind of the African Child. Kato is joining us from Uganda, and because of technical constraints, we will not be showing live video. Kato has provided us with a series of slides which help to illustrate the situations and environment that he'll be discussing. There'll be an opportunity for questions at the end of the talk. We'll be collecting questions using the Zoom chat window, which you can find at the bottom of your screen, and I'll be presenting the questions to our speaker. Please keep your questions short and to the point. Unfortunately, we may not be able to get every question. We may combine questions where appropriate. We've enabled access to the Zoom chat for all participants. We'll use the Zoom chat to collect these questions and also ask for people to post about technical issues. For those who would prefer more informal discussion, we invite you to join the text chat on. In all cases, we expect participants to be respectful of the speakers and of audience members. This talk is being recorded for publication on our YouTube channel. If this is a concern to you, please turn off your video and/or use a pseudonym. Now I'll turn it over to Kato. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I will go ahead and you gave my introduction. I don't need to repeat that, I think. But briefly, I can say that I'm a Ugandan, based in Uganda, and basically I'm a lawyer, more so working into human rights concerns and cases, and leading and advising humanist atheist organizations in Uganda, but also in Africa. And I'm happy to talk about a new book, which I have. That's The God Business and the Death of Reason in Africa. And it's this book I'm going to base on to make this presentation tonight. This book, The God Business, has 37 chapters. And in these chapters, briefly, the first 4 chapters is all about Africa. I give a brief about Africa. I give a brief history. I give a brief history about slavery and African Americans' history. Then I talk about how basically Africa and Africans are highly religious, and how the concept of religion and the concept of God has been part of us for generations, for years. It's part of our history that when the missionaries brought these other foreign religions, they found us with our own religions already, and we are practicing these religions. So religion is not new to Africa. It has been part and parcel of our lives. But when we look at the reality today and compare it with the reality yesterday, we see that religion today has taken a negative toll, has adversely affected us in Africa more than I think than any other people. Because today, in this book, I highlight a few things where we have gone off the tangent. As people in Africa today, majority of people in Africa today tend to spend more time in worship, more time in prayer than actually doing actual work. And it's because of this that we are having a number of challenges as people don't do what they're supposed to do and concentrate on the unknown and put too much hope in an invisible God helping them. You can see the pastors in Africa reaping big out of our ignorance, getting lots of money from people, churches being built day and night, almost every village, almost every corner in our country here has a church, and our people are heavily invested in this church. I'm going to quote directly from the book I wrote, and I'm going to quote from chapter 145, page 145, chapter 20. I'm going to read through what I wrote about the situation. I say that to any African reading this book, I'll refer you to your country's annual calendar. A look at Uganda's calendar indicates that we have 18 public holidays in a year, and there are those which are simply created because an important person has died, and the country will have to stop working for several days. President Museveni, for example, wakes up in a day and declares a national day of prayers. Between 2020 and 2021, we have had 5 national days of prayers, praying away COVID-19, and leaders thought ignorantly that prayers can heal COVID-19. Poor Ugandans, thinking that an imaginary Jewish God can protect them when the Jews ensured that all their citizens are fully immunized before COVID-19 could be a threat. For us in Africa, we are praying away COVID. There are thousands of mushrooming churches in Africa, and on each day, a new church is born, starting in rented rooms or playgrounds or in an incomplete building, and hundreds of worshippers, I call them the sheep, will join the church, will grow in just a matter of months. These churches, these church planters, are often semi-illiterates or even completely uneducated, and feed myths and lies and superstitions to their equally ignorant and gullible sheep. And the cycle of ignorance continues from one generation to another. One may think that there are so many churches because Africans have thirst for Christ and need for a savior, and this may be right, going by the myriad of challenges millions of Africans go through on a daily. Many of these challenges are self-inflicted and can be avoided if people rejected religion, if we had a more secular society than we have today. We have more churches than schools and hospitals in Uganda today. These churches start from a point of ignorance, constant false teaching, inflated ego and pride, and of course, due to the burning desire of the preachers to make quick money for themselves. Churches are without doubt businesses and a form of employment in Africa, where unemployment is a major challenge today. In every sub-Saharan African country, there are more mosques and churches than factories, schools, and hospitals. This is an indication of no growth, as domestic revenue mobilization remains low and our debt reaches unsustainable levels. And this explains the paradox of economic growth and unemployment in Africa. We have economies which have failed to create jobs, but can have suitable environment for the establishment of thousands of churches. Without economic growth, do not expect to have jobs in Africa. By allowing thousands of churches get started in Africa and letting people stay in these churches for many hours. In 2012 alone, an American economist, Arthur Kuhn, did a robust research and found that a mere 1% increase in the growth rate of GDP would lead to a 0.3 reduction in unemployment through what has come to be popularly called the Kuhn law. And his assessment is spot on. Now, when you look at Uganda, for example, and you look at our statistics, Uganda's GDP has expanded excellently since 1986, rising from USD 3.9 billion in 1986 to USD 27.5 billion in 2015. I'm talking about the impact of the region and the impact of the churches and the mosques on our livelihood, on our development, and on our success. And I'm saying that this is a huge challenge because much of the time we will find ourselves lagging behind when you compare with other countries which take the good business less seriously. And I'm saying that the business I have against the region makes me feel like cycling between sadness and uncontrollable anger and emotional pain. So when I was writing this book, I was looking at the damage we have as people living in Africa, as people expecting rewards from doing nothing, from an imaginary being, from miracles, without putting emphasis on what must be done, on what should we do to get ourselves out of these challenges. But we keep on keeping on our knees, praying away our challenges when we end up always in conflicts, we end up always with diseases, in poverty. Today, there are a number of people who don't believe in vaccinations, for example, which I also talk about in this book, that when people begin believing so much in superstitions, so much in gods, they begin getting skeptical about the science. And today, we have so many people who think that actually vaccinations don't work, that people are going to use vaccinations to make them infertile, that scientists want to kill them. So it has been a challenge, even talk about vaccination, even to encourage people to vaccinate, because people, majority of these people do believe that science contradicts God. They believe science is out there to harm them. So when we have dogma and superstitions in society, you need to create avenue to ensure that people are encouraged to think independently, to critically ask questions, to think through whatever they are being fed on. There is a challenge also in Africa, and most in countries like Uganda, most in countries like Congo, countries like South Africa, countries that are highly endowed with resources, with natural resources, with good weather, with good climate, but people cannot concentrate on production. People spend so much expecting the gods to reward them. They look at the sky god to solve their problem than utilizing the resources they have to get them out of poverty. Elsewhere, people are coming into Africa to utilize the resources we have, to utilize the good soils we have. Today, as I speak, many African countries have Chinese investors as farmers engaged in small businesses, doing whatever they can to utilize the best environment we have here, to utilize it and make enough crops for themselves to sell and get rich. When most of us here are lamenting about problems, others are seeing opportunities which are here. And as we lament about these problems, we keep it in prayer. We keep praying for miracles to happen and save us from these challenges. Today, I've been part of the team of lawyers handling cases where atheists and unbelievers are being persecuted in Africa, running away from different countries, looking for help. I understand that Center for Inquiry and Humanist International and Atheist Alliance have teamed up to support many apostates, to support many atheists, to support many humanists at risk, running away from trouble, to get saved from their own people who want to kill them. This year alone, Humanists International has received over 200 requests from humanists at risk and has assisted 72 individuals, and with the help of Center for Inquiry and others. In Uganda alone this year, we handled 2 cases of atheists running away from trouble, from getting lynched by their own people. I have several cases on my desk here in my country where people are disowned by their own families because they no longer subscribe to their own religions, because they have denounced religion, because they have questioned God. Now, when you have a family which cannot support you, when you have a family which takes you for an enemy because you have left religion, it becomes a challenge for you to settle down and contribute to the development of your country. Now, this is so challenging in many African countries. In Nigeria, for example, I've been seeing those photos moving around. We have had challenges of religious influenced wars. The Boko Haram has been on fighting for over a decade in a country in what they want to establish as an Islamic state. And it's quite hard to live in northern Nigeria when you question Islam. Today, our brother Mubarak Bala, whom I talk about in this book on page 71, is in prison and all his rights have been taken away. He has been there for over a year. Why? Because he dared to question the authenticity of religion, the authenticity of Allah on Facebook. And his right has been taken away. He has been refused bail, has been refused a court hearing. Why? Because politics and religion are bedfellows. They are obsolete. Politics supports religion in many instances, but even human rights, where we know must be upheld, are violated. So Muhammad Bala is in prison today, not because he's a criminal, but because of his conscience. These are prisoners of conscience because he dared to question the authenticity of Allah and Islam, because he dared to ask the important questions and they were not answered. So when we have this witch hunt in many of these African countries, it makes it very hard for people who reason independently to survive in this kind of setting. This week on my Facebook account, I posted a story of a chairperson of one of our districts here, Kalungu, Ahmed. The gentleman is called Ahmed. This gentleman, the LC5 chairperson, is like a governor of a district, went ahead and distributed pigs to people in his area because there was a government program intending to get people out of poverty by giving them pigs to go and rear them. Now, when this chairperson distributed the pigs, the Muslim community in his area rose up and attacked him and told him he had only few hours to go to the main mosque and meet the leadership of the Muslims and apologize, or else they are going to punish him. And this was a disaster. So 2 days ago, this gentleman, the LC5, went ahead and knelt before the sheikhs and the imams and apologized, and even said he was going to be punished. Let me talk about the education system in Africa, for example, and how it worsens the situation. When we talk about our education, many of us have gone through religious founded schools. I'm part of the product of religious founded schools from nursery school to high school. But also I found extremely religious teachers at the university. But when you go to school as a child, one of the core subjects we study is basically religion, and it is being examined. So as a child, right from home, your mother tells you about the gods, but more so about God. Because now, a person like me comes from a Christian background, from a Catholic background. In fact, my mother wanted me to be a Catholic priest. So she used to take me to church and she used to point to the priests and tell me, I want you to be like that gentleman. He's very smart, he's going to heaven, he's very holy, things like that. So they begin telling you things right from home. You say the prayers in the morning before you go to school. You say the prayers when you come back from school. You say the prayers when you are going to have your meals. You say the prayers when you are going to rest. You are going to sleep. So a child right from home to school, where there are subjects which basically talk about religion and the gods and the miracles and all that, where someone is taught to cram, to memorize the Bible, the Quran, and the whole books. It becomes hard for this young child to think independently because learners are taught what to think, not how to think. And it is taking a big percentage on the brain growth of the reasoning capacity of many children, of many learners, and later on of many adults in our setting. Because we grew up in a situation where you cannot challenge the status quo. You are only fed from one angle. If there was a chance of allowing subjects like philosophy, for example, subjects like on humanism, on critical thinking to be taught alongside religious studies, we'll be having people who can question. Someone may ask, how did you get out of the indoctrination? For me, it was basically the effort of my father, who had brought books on philosophy at home, books by talking about Plato, talking about the philosophers like Cicero, Voltaire, and others, and encouraging us to read. Books written by African scholars like Junior Achebe, like Ale Chamadi, and Soyinka. These stories had very pregnant message about gods and how these gods were being challenged. So my father helped me and my siblings to begin questioning the all-powerful gods. I'm talking about the African gods in these African books, African authored books, where gods were being tested and where gods were being exposed as being too weak. Now, because of that support from my family, because of a good rebel at home, I was able to question stuff. I remember my father introducing to me to the works of Aristotle, to the works of Plato, to the works of Voltaire when I was a child, when I was a teenager, about 11, 12, 13 years. And later on, other philosophers who opened my thinking so that when I went to school, I began questioning what was being taught. But still, I had to take religious studies for 13 years. In fact, I did divinity as one of my core subjects before I joined the university. And when I joined the university, still, even my professors were many of them were heavily indoctrinated, were heavily believers in Christ. When I was at law school, some of my professors, some of my lecturers would basically encourage us to have a prayer before we do the exam. Imagine sitting in a lecture theater, waiting for the question paper, it's given to you, and the professor comes and says, let us pray. Can one of you volunteer to pray for you so that you can pass this exam? Now, what I'm saying here is simple, that the consequence of prayers, the consequence of believing in deities takes a huge toll on the thinking of so many intellectuals in Africa, that we may find a person with a PhD, for example, in physics, still believing in miracles, still believing in a virgin birth. In this book, I talk about a story of a professor of science who was at our top university in Uganda, Makerere University, who joined a cult leader who had a dream that she could use magic, she could use sorcery, she could use witchcraft to fight the sitting government. Now, a professor of physics left the lecture theater and joined a guerrilla war where the leader believed in witchcraft, believed in smearing the fighters with concoction made of blood of animals, millet, and other beverages, and he could smear this stuff on their bodies and tell them that when they shoot at you, the bullet will not land on you. You will not die. So we have a professor of physics who joined this kind of movement and end up actually getting killed on the front line. So education alone is not enough. The question I've been asking is, what type of education are we passing on to our children? Are we passing on to people? And the caliber of those passing on this kind of education is also questionable. So when you have an educated class of people who still takes deities seriously, you have a challenge, because it's going to be very hard to make these people think independent of these religions. We have a parliament that in most cases works on emotions to pass laws. In 2012, I was part of the lawyers that challenged the Kill the Gay Bill, which later became the Kill the Gay Act, which was very popular worldwide, about Uganda wanting to kill gay people. But passing it was a gift which the Speaker of Parliament then, Honorable Rebecca Kadaga, gave to the Ugandans as a Christmas gift. She said, I want to pass this law, this bill into law, so that it becomes a gift to all God-believing people in Uganda, because we don't want homosexuality. And now there was this kind of law passed not on its merit, but because of emotions. In fact, when we went to court to challenge it, the court agreed with us because the quorum for passing the bill into law was not enough as required by the laws of Uganda. So technically we had the bill quashed. Now, issues to do with homosexuality, issues to do with sorcery, witchcraft, issues that basically are decided not because of their merit, but because of the influence of religions we have in the country. And it's the same challenge in many other African countries. I understand that apart from South Africa, many other countries in Africa basically witch hunt homosexuals, basically take them as unfit, take them as unhealthy, take them as ungodly, satanic, and it becomes quite hard to open up your mind and say, I'm gay, to open up your mind and say, I'm a lawyer who supports the rights of gay people. I mean, you get hated because of the angle, because of the work you do to protect the minorities in our countries. Why? Because people believe that these are not God-fearing people. These are sinners. These are people who are responsible for the poverty we have in the country, for the unemployment we have, for the calamities that befell us. They don't attribute these challenges to a rational way of thinking. They have to find scapegoats to say it's because of the homosexuals that we are having a challenge in this country. It's because of prostitutes that we're having a challenge in this country. It's because of witches. There are many instances when we have had people being killed because another person claims that person made me impotent. And you can't believe that someone is superstitious to that extent that she thinks that she's infertile, she's unable to give birth because a co-wife has bewitched her. And this leads to a lynching of such innocent people. So we have these challenges among our people. Challenges because of our miseducation, challenges because of lack of better leadership, challenges because of suffocation of the right voices. When you come up and challenge dogma, when you come up and challenge religion and superstition and all these horrible, in most cases become a public enemy. You become an enemy, even among your own people, even among your family. Many of my colleagues have had challenges in doing their work of publicizing about the lies promoted by some of these preachings, about the dangers of hating gay people, about the need to give them their rights. I've been a victim personally where my family was attacked, my car was burnt, because I was moving from television to another, from a radio station to another, talking about the need to accommodate gay people, the need to accommodate prostitutes, because they are what they are, not because they're immoral, but because that's what they are. So we had challenges as an organization. My organization was attacked, offices are vandalized. As I said, my car was burned. And it is not only me, but also many other activists have been actually imprisoned, have been blackmailed, have been witch hunted. It becomes very hard to operate in such kind of setting. Now, it's that kind of bitterness that we have, because we know that for sure it is because people don't reason independently. There is a fall of reason, as I put it in the opening poem of this book, that the ability to think independent, the ability to think things through is deliberately undermined by preachers who preach about miracles and prosperity gospel. Today, in many African countries, Uganda, Ghana, Nigeria, you realize that some of the most wealthy people are pastorpreneurs, as I call them in this book, pastorpreneurs, individuals who wake up and start churches and begin making money from people. Now, these churches, as I've been saying, are strategically located in slum areas. Many of them don't go in posh areas. Many of them are built in areas where they are the most poor of the poor, where people are frustrated, where people are unemployed, and they go with the gospel that God is going to be the answer. And they make these innocent people, as I've been seeing some of those photos which have been shared, they donate their hard-earned money, they sell their property, and take the money to the churches so that churches can be built. Today in Uganda, we have multi-billion churches built in slum areas, built in very poor setting, multi-billion-dollar churches. Yet that money could be used to build vocational training colleges where people can go and learn employable skills, where that money could build hospitals where people can go and get good care. So when you have people willing to invest in churches, willing to make churches very wealthy, then we have a problem. In Nigeria, we have some of the most richest pastors in the whole world. Pastors with private choppers, pastors with palaces, pastors who move like presidents in convoys, but ministering to a people who are completely poor and cannot even afford 2 meals a day. So these are the challenges I'm talking about in this book, trying to create awareness, trying to tell people that, look, we have been misled. Look, we can own our mental faculty. We can think for ourselves. We can ask these questions. We can be able to live a good life without expecting miracles. And this is the message which I have been advancing throughout this book and which is paramount. And I want to end with this reading from page 71, where I talk about the challenges we have and how we can go past them. This is chapter 8, titled Religion, the Fall of Reason. I'm going to read just 3 paragraphs as I summarize. And I write, we don't need anything to do with religion to live a good life. We spend too many hours thinking about a non-existing entity called God. Religiously praying, worshiping a fictitious entity, working to please a non-existing entity, hating and killing each other, dividing ourselves in the name of appeasing a non-existing entity we call God. Religion can be equated to living in a dark room with a task of looking for a black cat that does not exist in the dark room. It is moving in circles, all dressed so beautifully, but going nowhere. If we were a thinking people as Africans, Mbalik Bala wouldn't be in prison today. Bala is in prison today because millions of Nigerians, just like so many Africans, believe that gods are untouchable. No one has a right to critique them. Bala's father, a good-for-nothing intellectual, was behind the incarceration of his own son because we are told he is a Muslim cleric who is ready to murder his own son to appease Allah. Divisions help the oppressors, and the oppressors are within us and with us. Our divisions help those in power. Our divisions help the oligarchy, and we shall be better off. The moment we realize that the God concept is both business and politics, and it's designed to benefit the powerful and the scheming manipulators. We divide ourselves along the color of our skin or the religion we profess, forgetting that we are nothing but one human race. We are all Africans. We can live together in harmony if we dare to think, and humanism can be our most credible unifying philosophy. I want to end on that in short. And my submission for now will be rested on that premise. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kato. I wonder if you could elaborate on the fact that you talked a lot about how religious indoctrination early in childhood makes it very difficult for those that you are speaking with and educating to be able to think outside of that because they've had it since birth and it's in their community and in their way of life. Did this create these barriers? How did you overcome the barriers?
Thank you very much for the question. As I said, one, it took reading, basically wide reading of books on philosophy, which we had at home at that time. And basically my father helped me a lot because he was skeptical himself. He was one guy who could question stuff. So he gave us these books and helped me read through. By the time I was 12 years, I was able to question. I'd read Aristotle, I'd read Socrates, Voltaire, and all his work. And this helped me to question stuff as a teenager, because there was no chance I would question the same stuff at school. So it takes people helping you to question, but also takes individual effort to read, at least in my time. Today, we are lucky that we have the internet, and many of young people who are exposed to the internet are now reading for themselves. Some are beginning to question. And I'm also happy to report that now many atheists in Africa, many humans in Africa are online, and they're talking about these things, maybe using fake names, pseudonyms, because they don't want to be known, but they are making it much more easier for others to learn about new dimensions of criticism than us who lived before the internet. So it's becoming much easier for those who can search for the truth. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for outlining that, Kato. For anybody else who has any other additional questions, there's a link in the chat to Kato's new book, the God Business and the Death of Reason in Africa. We thank you so much, Kato, for championing the technical difficulties and joining us today. I thank you again.
There is one question there, Brenda. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I cannot see the question, Shauna.
Okay, I'll read it. How do you separate cultural religion from belief religion?
We have regions based on our culture, and we have regions that were imported to Africa. So when I talk about cultural regions, to narrow it down in your the way I've put it, we're talking about regions which basically attached to our African traditional culture practices. And we call them the African traditional regions. Now, many of our tribes have these gods, have these religions. I'll give you an example of my own name. My family name is Mukasa, and Mukasa is the name of a god. Is the name of a god because in my tribe and in my culture, we believe, or people believed, that there were superhumans among them who became gods. Even the kings themselves, the kingdoms were managed by the kings. The kings were revered, were taken as gods. I'm a twin. My name Kato is given to a young male twin. If we have two boys, the last one is called Kato. Two twins, the last one is called Kato. Now, Kato is a god because it's from a word Katonda, and Katonda means the creator. Now, there are religions that are purely in our culture, in our traditions. I used to see my grandmother and my aunties having baskets where they could put money and some fetishes that they were supposed to keep the twin gods, us, happy. So that is the culture and the religion. Then you have the beliefs which have been brought from 1875, for example, in Uganda, the Christianity, the Islam, the Buddhism, the Hinduism, and others. So we have those which are taken as foreign, but have taken over. But also have those which are now more indigenous. But again, to add more, we have what we call indigenous churches or independent churches, where a person comes up and says, I'm a god, and says, you don't need to worship any other thing. You don't need to worship Jesus. You need to worship me. We have main god in Africa. And one of our recent gods in Uganda died just last year. Actually, died this year in March. It was called Bishop Ziruhanga. He is a guy who was in his late 80s by the time of his death, but he had thousands of his followers, had his own Bible, made his own Bible, and he had many people believing in him as a god. So we can see the traditions, you can see the independent churches coming in, but also the foreign religions coming in. But they coexist incidentally. And finally, there is what we call double worshiping. There are some people who still believe in the traditional religions, outwardly fear to people with them, because people take them as backward. So they worship them when they go back in their own homes, but publicly they call themselves Muslims and Christians. So that worshiping is a very big thing here in many in Uganda.
Thank you very much, Kato. At this
Welcome.
time, I want to thank you very much for joining us from Uganda, despite all the challenges you had, and sharing this presentation. It's been enlightening for me in particular, but I'm sure for everyone. And we thank you again.